All right, here we are with the next keynote of the day. Our keynote speaker has I've just read 35 years of history in the IT industry. Yesterday we talked about that he really covered many different roles on the tech provider side and in open source, and on the other hand also on the users and in the industry side. And now he cares as a CTO for strategy, for tech strategy at WSO2. And please give a hand to Eric Newcomer.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you, everyone. A special thanks for staying after the raffle. I really appreciate that. I'm Eric Newcomer, CTO at WSO2. What I want to talk with you about today is, well, we've had a lot of talks already about where is APIM going, what's the future direction for APIM. And what I want to talk about today is our view on this, and I'm going to start talking about why we're doing it, and then I'll talk about what it is we're doing. And what it is what we're calling a digital platform as a service with everything you need to develop, deploy, and manage the APIs. And first, about WSO2, we're known primarily for our API Manager product and Identity Server product. That's taken us to a good, profitable business over the last almost 17 years. And now it's time for the next step to build on the foundation that we've built the last 17 years. And the new versions of our products will be delivered as software as a service in the cloud. So traditionally open source, and now moving as the industry is toward the cloud with software as a service models for the new products. So why are we doing this? Let's talk about this. The world is getting more and more distributed all the time. Sometimes I like to start with the mainframe, and it's been a long journey since then. But the reason to bring up the mainframe is in the original days of business applications, there was one application per computer usually. When first personal applications were deployed, they were on that computer. It was in the computer room. You went there. That was the only place you could find it and interact with it, was in that room. And now, of course, applications are spread over hundreds or thousands of computers in the cloud, in your pocket, in home, everywhere there's a computer. Everywhere things are connected, and everywhere things are integrated, and everywhere there are APIs. I think in Ali's talk on Monday, she mentioned there's a continued growth of all kinds of APIs that we're seeing. Microservices are driving a significant portion of API growth. New types of APIs, GraphQL, async APIs, gRPC APIs, creating just a flood of new challenges, a flood of new work to meet new challenges with different types of APIs. And we see this trend just continuing into the future. We've gone through desktop and distributed APIs, web APIs, edge APIs, microservices are very popular, the new wave of distributed computing. And people are talking about metaverse apps and Web3, and I have no idea what these things are. I think there's some a bit of information out there about what they are, but a lot of hype right now, and has to settle down before we can be sure what the metaverse is, although we think it involves a lot of devices and cars and smart homes and smart cities and virtual experiences throughout them all. And for the distributed apps and Web3, somehow we're democratizing control of the web. Instead of being controlled by big companies, it'll be controlled by an anonymous blockchain or something. But whatever happens, and we're not sure of exactly what it's going to look like, but we can be sure that it's going to continue to become more distributed. There's going to be need for more integration, more APIs. That's just not stopping. It's accelerating. And another trend is that customers are now expecting great digital experiences. Digital pioneers have famously disrupted multiple industries, retail, transportation, entertainment, banking. And this is going to continue. Customers expect to be able to do everything on the phone or on the web that they could do in person. The concept of a digital double is becoming part of perhaps the metaverse trend, and part of how it's expressed that somebody wants to be able to create a digital experience that matches the in-person experience, or perhaps is better than the in-person experience for shopping, for banking, for financial services, I mentioned that, or for entertainment and so on. So it's personalized, real-time geosensitive and predictive, and customers are starting to move to the companies that provide them the better experience, the frictionless commerce, the better way of doing something in business with that company. And this is something that you cannot buy. This is something where you're competing with other businesses to attract the customers to your platform based on the customer experience that you offer, and it needs to be unique and differentiated. If everyone had the same thing, how would anybody choose? How would you differentiate yourself from your competitors? How would you attract more customers than the next person? If it could be bought, everyone would have the same thing. There would be no differentiation. Differentiation is something that has to be built to show your unique competitive characteristic. In financial services, where I was just recently working, you might have a 3% cashback card, a better way to process mortgages, a better dashboard for viewing your investment and deciding what you want to do with the money. And these are things that are points of competition among financial services companies, and they need to be expressed through the digital channel now. You can't expect customers to go in person to the bank branch to get that experience. It has to be online, and banks must compete that way. And this has to be built. So we come with the expression, this is from Jeff Lawson at Twilio, build or die, in his book about Ask Your Developer. And it means if you don't build that great digital experience, somebody else is going to build it and attract your customers, and you're going to suffer competitively because you haven't built that thing. And because of this, companies need to think of themselves more as software companies, as technology companies, and build these great digital experiences as if they were a tech company building products and putting them out into the market and iterating them and improving them constantly, as tech companies do. And it also means, because everyone is short-staffed and skills are hard to come by, that we need to broaden out the participation, the creation of these products, to get them to market quickly, to iterate them, to improve them. And we have to get them out because I saw a presentation by Mark Zuckerberg, and we can say what we want about him. Plenty of comments about him, of course, but he gave a great commencement address at Harvard a few years back talking about how he created Facebook. One of the things he said that stuck with me is he said, you can't really understand how to solve the problem until you are working on it. He didn't know what Facebook was going to become until they were working on it. And this is true for these great customer experiences. You won't know what customer reaction is going to be, what the feedback is going to be, until you put it out there and start to get it. Innovation is not about our ideas that we imagine and put them out and get people to adopt. It's about understanding the problems, the customer problems that need to be solved, and figuring out how to solve them in a good way. And that has to be something you participate in and you get started on and work on it. And another perspective on this about why we're doing it, why we're doing what we're doing, is that over the years we have worked with a lot of customers. We've been in business 17 years, and we've had the good fortune to work with a lot of great companies. And they've often taken the approach, if they're building something new, building some new software, and I think the same is applying to building digital experiences now that they're thinking about. It's when they're building applications, new applications, they spend some time creating the development environments, choosing the development standards, the development tools for the company's developers to use, and they choose the deployment tools, the deployment mechanisms, set up the production deployment processes. And it can take a lot of time to do this and effort, but companies do work on this. And we've done this with some of the companies listed here. And so we've seen this firsthand, the need to create those great development environments, because developers need a great experience as well, and create those deployment environments to get something out there into production as quickly as possible and iterate it quickly if it needs to be fixed or if it needs to be improved. Sometimes it's taken 60% of someone's budget to create the platforms just before they get started to develop and deploy their new applications, using the new technology, using the new techniques they want to put into practice to create that digital differentiation, create that differentiation for their business through their IT system investments. And this shows a little bit of the complexity of setting these things up. And this would be for a modern digital team where you have continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD, automated test, in the build pipeline, and you have autonomous teams working on microservices. You might have an innovation lab doing some prototyping of some new things that need to be built. And then you have some of the practices around Agile, and different ways of program management that need to be built in. And getting this all up and running can take a lot of effort, especially in a large organization where a lot of people, a lot of departments, a lot of technologies have to be coordinated. And yet still, research tells us many of these efforts on digital transformation will fail. I can tell you about this from my experience at Citi. When the pandemic hit, we were in a very big rush to digitize all the remaining services that still required somebody to go into a bank branch at the time the pandemic started. And business was way ahead of IT. Business said, we need this right away. IT said, okay, we'll go and do it. But it turned out to be a little bit harder than everyone thought, and many things were not done on time. Some things failed, and the problem was usually on the back end, getting not just the APIs done correctly. We spent a lot of time at this conference talking about API first and getting API design right, and that is a big challenge that needs to be tackled, and that was a big part of what we worked on. But the bigger part was connecting those APIs to the back-end systems where we had the existing functionality that needed to be exposed digitally for those customers to take advantage of those services through the web and mobile apps. And that was where things really got tough. That's where things got into this thing we call the messy middle, with all the complexity and the lack of skills required to get the digital strategy implemented and start to get the value of these things out in the market. So another observation we have is this is the hard part, is getting the back end right, if you will, getting the data part right, getting the feed into those and out of the APIs, getting the integrations done with the existing systems that many times have to be part of the solution, especially if the solution needs to be done quickly. So what can we do? One trend that's helpful to this is automation. We can think about going to the cloud. We can think about taking advantage of cloud capabilities that help provide better digital experiences. These things include the always-on capability of the cloud. You pick up the mobile phone or get on the web. Cloud is always on. Cloud scales automatically. I remember years ago, Rolling Stones tickets would go on sale, the website would crash, or some other big event would happen, websites would crash. It doesn't happen anymore. Everything's running in the cloud. The scalability is there. The capacity is there when you need it, as you need it. And the clouds are agile because we have cloud development and deployment characteristics based around containers and container orchestration that help speed the time to market, the time to production. So we know what the deployment target is to get these benefits. That's Docker containers, Kubernetes, and the analogy for this, the metaphor for this are containers, shipping containers that you can put anything inside and use as a transportation on trucks, on ships, on trains. That same container can go anywhere. So in the case of the cloud, just give us your containers, we'll automate them, put them out into Kubernetes and run them. So that's a help, right? Because that takes care of some of the time to market issues, that gets our product out there, gets our feedback loop started. We can automate this. But saying it's a lot easier than doing it, it turns out. And just to give one example, this is the troubleshooting guide from the official Kubernetes website. And I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to say that getting Kubernetes clusters to work correctly and debugging them when they go wrong is not easy, and is not something everyone wants to have to deal with. If you're a large digital pioneer such as Google or Amazon or eBay or Uber, and I've talked to the head of site reliability engineering at Uber, and he told me that they spend a lot of time. They have a whole team setting up the Kubernetes clusters and getting them ready and available for the developers. And there's a particular handoff point between the development team and the site reliability engineering team that's well defined in terms of the Kubernetes configuration file. Once the developers get their containers, their application, the containers, define the config file for Kubernetes, they hand it off to site reliability engineering team, and they deploy it out onto that large cloud-native cluster they manage. But what if you're not Google or Uber or PayPal or Netflix or somebody like that? How do you deal with Kubernetes? It's not so easy. Getting a site reliability engineering team, getting a DevOps team in place is not so easy. Kind of a challenge. So In some cases, it may be more difficult, create more difficulties to introduce this kind of automation, even though once it's up and working, of course, it's got great benefit. So in conclusion, what we're doing is creating what we call a digital platform, everything in one place that's needed to support this kind of innovation, to support creating that differentiated digital experience, getting it out into production, getting that feedback loop started, iterating through and improving it, so that when you're working on the problem, you have a framework, you have a platform within which to work and deploy it. You may not be able to buy a differentiated digital experience, but we think you should be able to buy the platform on which you build it and iterate and improve it. And we defined also an engineering practice around this, or a methodology, to help use it correctly and get the right results. Oh, it's a build slide, good. So I should have practiced the build. Okay, so the digital platform itself collects together what you need for development and deployment of digital capabilities. And the experience engineering is the approach or the methodology of how to create these. And Choreo is what we call the digital platform as a service. It went to GA last week, March 30th, so it's very new. And we can show you a demo at the booth if you'd like to stop by. We can tell you more about it. If you want to use it and take a look at it, it's free for use online. This is the first version of it. I'll talk a bit about the vision of it and where we're going with it. But basically, we're delivering in the platform what you need to create cloud-native digital applications, APIs, integrations, and services, and deploy and manage them. So our vision of where is APIM going, it's going toward supporting the development and deployment of new APIs, since the trend in the industry is toward more and more APIs being developed and deployed over time. The distribution challenge, the API challenge is not going away, it's increasing, and the need for developing and deploying new APIs is not going to go away either. It's going to just increase. So if we can simplify the process of developing and deploying and cut the amount of time it takes to create and deploy them, and increase the ability to iterate and start working on a problem and getting the feedback on the problem and improve what's being done, then we feel we can contribute a lot to the industry challenges, to help solve the industry challenges around getting new differentiated digital experiences into the market, getting new APIs into production and seeing what they are like, working on the problem, getting the problem, improving the problem through iterative work on it by more quickly supporting the development and deployment of new APIs, services, and integrations. So this is our architecture slide, and I'll take you through it to talk about what Choreo does. So up in the upper right-hand corner is the marketplace, where we can import and display APIs from existing systems, from SaaS APIs, or produce or publish automatically APIs created by Choreo. So the marketplace becomes the repository or the directory, if you will, of available components and APIs from which to build new things, and to which to include, because often APIs are composite, or often APIs have connectors and calls to other APIs. So the marketplace is where you find all of those. You can pre-build or pre-provision or take advantage of some of the ones we provide out of the box as well. The next step is to have a system architecture defining what's being built, API first designed, granularity of microservices, domain-driven design. This is not yet in the tool, that's why it's in white. We plan to put it in at some time in the future. What is there now is for the enterprise developer a graphical and textual coding capability. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But to help speed up the development of APIs, we have created a language which called Ballerina that has capability for cloud-native computing, very well oriented toward APIs, toward putting small units of work together. And it has within it the capability to create sequence diagrams from any part of the code. Those sequence diagrams also are capable of creating code. And we have full bidirectional fidelity between the diagram and the code to make it easier to see what's being done especially if there's a long sequence of API calls or a sequence of integrations or connectors that can be viewed graphically and even edited graphically. If there's something that needs to be done in the code that's a little bit complex or easier to do in the code, such as create a for loop or copy and paste, that can be all done in the code and will automatically be represented in the diagram. Once the development process is done for the new APIs, services, integrations, there's a button to be clicked. The code is stored in GitHub, and the CI/CD pipeline is triggered and deployed right out into Kubernetes automatically. And then from there, we can switch over to API management console, publish the API through the developer portal where it's consumed by developers who are building those apps for the end users. To be clear, we do not have within the platform the mobile app development capability or the web app capability yet. We are talking with partners about getting that so we can bring that into the box. But we provide, other than that, everything those apps need to access APIs, data, new microservices, to provide those great digital experiences because, of course, without access to the data from those apps and to those apps, the apps are not really doing much. Of course, classic example, Uber is completely dependent on the APIs from Google Maps. The graphical user interface would not do anything if it weren't for the API supplying data back and forth to it. I also use the analogy of a great flat screen TV, and without a streaming provider, you've got a great piece of hardware, but without anything serving content, it's not giving you what you want. So we're focused on that part of giving you the content and the data that you need in and out of the digital applications. On the roadmap is to provide that as well, but it's not there today. Other parts in the platform that are there today, however, ability to manage APIs. So, I've really focused on kind of what's new and what we're doing new around API management, but everything that's in our classical API management product is either already in Choreo or soon will be, as after the first version. So complete API management in it, and in the additional piece that we're contributing in the context of where is API management going, our thought for where it's going is it's going toward development and deployment, since that's so much of the challenge out there in the industry today is how do we get those things done very quickly given the demand for them and given the sort of pressure already on developers. I think Ali mentioned this also in her keynote talk. You're not going to get more budget, you're not going to get more developers, get more nice tools. That's pretty much what we're thinking about as well. Trying to build that nice tool that will help the developers get the job done more quickly and more productively. Observability and business insights are built in so you can see what's going on, debug the code, figure out what the latency is, get some information on how well it's running, where it needs to be tweaked, artificial intelligence for helping you code it. It's more like code complete type of functionality. If you're creating the code, it can give hints on which connectors to use, which data mappings to use, which transformations to use, that kind of thing. And security, so that when everything is deployed, it's deployed in secure fashion within those containers, those Kubernetes clusters. Okay, so that's what it is. And it's what the code looks like. So there's a diagram of the code here, and this is one of these classic, let's figure out how many COVID deaths. We've got to get a new example. I don't like the COVID deaths example. But it is a very popular API, and this is showing the integration of that API as defined in Choreo, both in diagrammatic format and the textual code format. These are equivalent. If there's a change to the diagram, which is showing the the flow in the vertical boxes, the horizontal boxes are showing the API calls. So this will be done for any set of functional components within the API or the integration or the service, and any calls external to that API or service or that function are shown in the horizontal lines. So this is a call to get the COVID data from the World Bank and send it to email. And this is the code for it. And if you could go over to the right-hand side and change the code, the diagram will adjust automatically and in real time. And the same if you add a component, a function, or an API to the diagram, it will generate the code for it automatically as well. This is important because it's all code. It's all in GitHub. It's all done through the engineering pipeline, so you're not losing any of the quality that you get from putting code into GitHub and putting it through CI/CD pipeline with the automated test and deploy. But you're getting the benefit of a graphical view and a graphical capability to edit. We don't like to really call it low code, although it's sort of in that direction of reducing the amount of code you have to write by doing it graphically. But it's not really the same type of low code tool where you're putting together abstract blocks of functions that don't really show you what the code is. So we think this is a better way to help developers that really need to do significant work quickly. And I should say it's all in VS Code, by the way. So all of this editing, if you've seen the graphic and the text, that's all VS Code. So it's good, consistent developer experience. Within VS Code, we've written the plugin for VS Code to support Choreo. So you edit in VS Code either online on the web or on the desktop and upload it to VS Code. One last point I want to make is we want to ensure that we're supporting hybrid world, and by the hybrid world we mean Choreo is working in the cloud, where we're deploying out into the data plane the artifacts that we've talked about developing, the APIs, integrations of services go into Kubernetes data plane on the cloud. Today this is in Azure. In 3 months or so, roughly, it will be your Kubernetes of your choice. GCP, AWS, Kubernetes Rancher, OpenShift, Rancher, whatever type of Kubernetes you want to deploy out to will be supported as an option as well. And we also have seamless interconnectivity between our products, existing products that are open source products for API management, integration, identity server that tend to be running in the enterprise, although these also can be running in the cloud. But point is we're going to continue to invest both in the existing products and the new and make sure they work together seamlessly. And okay, so this is kind of a made-up thing, but it's trying to, show the point in a way where we estimate, if there's a lot of complexity to deal with, you might be spending as little as 25% on the actual innovation on creating that differentiated digital experience that you need to compete against those others who are creating those. But if you can eliminate a lot of the complexity and spend a lot more time on valuable development, maybe you'll get up to 75% of your time spent on that kind of work, the real value work. These are just guesstimates, but we're just trying to say this is our goal of conclusion of why we're doing something and what we're doing is to help developers spend more time on the kind of work that matters to the bottom line, that matters to that differentiated digital experience, to getting it out there, to working on it, to improving it, and making sure these are created quickly and productively. Okay, and that's it. This is the summary slide, but I don't think I'm going to read that. I'm just going to say thanks, and here's the URLs for where you can find out more about Choreo and try it out. So with that, I'll just say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. And here's an opportunity to ask a question. Let's check the chat at the same time.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Any remarks?
Okay, stunned silence.
So, I was just thinking about, because we are here in API and a serverless conference, could one say this is kind of a serverless production environment?
Well,
or serverless fabric?
We like to say it's a serverless experience because you're not worrying about setting up the servers or managing them. We do all that for you. Actual serverless technology such as Lambdas and I forgot the Azure name for it, events perhaps, or functions, is on the roadmap. But it's serverless in concept that you don't have to worry about the servers. We just execute everything for you.
Less infrastructure, more doing.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Any remarks from the chat? Not at the moment. All right, then please give a loud applause to Eric Newcomer, and thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. See you at the booth.
Cool. And thank you very much for everybody for joining this conference, for you people right here on site, for everybody following us remotely. Of course, a big thanks to all of our partners, and last but not least, of course, a big thanks to all our wonderful speakers. Please, let's give all of them another applause, please. Thank you. Times are still like that we are kind of a fragmented community. As I said, more than a half of our community right here is only remote there, and it's still hard to bring everybody together. But maybe next year we manage that almost everybody, or maybe really everybody, likes to be here on site, and then we are going to have a real crowded house and, of course, easier communication between all parties involved. Let me please say, last but not least, of course, big thanks also to the team of SNS Media, from video, from organization, from sales, from marketing, and all colleagues who also helped making this conference possible. Thank you so much to everybody. And then I wish you a nice trip and a good trip home. Hope you are inspired by what you heard and what you discussed during this conference, and hope to see you soon at some of our future conferences. Thank you very much.